I've seen that you called the Ayatollah Khamenei the new Hitler of the Middle East.
بلا شك.
Absolutely.
Why?
Because he wants to expand. He wants to create his own project in the Middle East, very much like Hitler, who wanted to expand at the time. Many countries around the world and in Europe did not realize how dangerous Hitler was until what happened happened. I don't want to see the same events happening in the Middle East.
Israel and Iran are at war. At the time of writing, it hasn't been formalized, but after what happened in the pre-dawn hours of June the 13th, it's as good as done.
Tonight, Israel expanding its assault inside Iran as the conflict between the Middle East's two strongest military powers escalates. The two trading a barrage of attacks for a third day in a row after Israel launched what it called a preemptive attack. The US helping Israel defend itself against retaliatory strikes. And just hours ago, President Trump telling ABC News the US could be drawn into the conflict, but claiming that hasn't happened yet.
The explosions began at about 3 o'clock in the morning, again, local time in Tehran. In Jerusalem, the attack was dubbed Operation Rising Lion. Among the most important targets for Israel was a key uranium enrichment facility called Natanz, where Iran has worked to prepare enough uranium at the proper enrichment levels that it could create weapons-grade material on short notice. Images circulating on social media in the immediate aftermath of Israel's first wave of strikes showed Natanz in flames with smoke billowing high into the sky.
What do you think drives that hatred? We have seen again and again Iran calling for the destruction, for the wiping off of the map of Israel. What drives that?
Personally, I think it's all spiritual. I think it's all demonically led at the root. If you look back to Deuteronomy 28, God basically told the people of Israel that if you follow my ways, you're going to be blessed. If you don't, here's all the things that are going to happen. And some of those things included being dispersed all over the world, being mistreated. But then God makes a point to say, but I will not make a full end to you. And then in several places, we read that Israel's going to come back into their own land again.
Welcome back to Understanding the Times. I'm Ken Markell, along with my co-host, Pastor Josh Schwartz. And joining us today from Revive Church in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota, is Pastor Mark Henry. Mark, welcome back to the program.
Good to be with you guys.
So we know things are unfolding rapidly, almost by the minute in Israel right now. At the time of this recording, Tehran and most of Iran, most of their nuclear sites are being bombarded right now. The question is, should America get involved? But first off, what should Israel do to combat this threat?
Well, Israel's got to finish the job. You know, they're dismantling, of course, the leadership, the nuclear sites. All of these things need to be dismantled. And I think many Americans today have lost the significance of how important nuclear weapons are to keep the bad guys at bay. I mean, World War II ended because we dropped 2 nuclear bombs, atom bombs, on Hiroshima, and as a result of that, it ended the war. I mean, millions would have died. And this is the reality. If you have a state that has that in their ambition, and it's not a slogan, it is state policy to destroy America and destroy Israel. This has to be neutralized. And that's the reason they got to go all the way. This just can't be like you do in Vietnam or you do in the Korean War. America needs to go back. Israel needs to make sure they finish the job. Americans need to stand up and say, this has got to be a finished job. Unconditional surrender, everything dismantled.
Yeah. And it's like David Tull says. David always says, we live in a beautiful country, just in a really bad neighborhood. Their neighbors hate them. And so this is the chance for them to cut off the head of the snake, Iran, and bring at least a bit more peace and stability into their region so that they are not constantly being bombarded by rockets and missiles and other types of terrorist attacks. Now, Mark and Ken, the question is this. Now, what does the USA do? As the greatest ally to the Israeli people, what do we do?
Yeah,
do we go into war?
Because social media is just blowing up and people are saying, conservatives are saying, hey, Trump's going to lose his base if America gets involved in this. We don't need and shouldn't be involved in this war. What are your thoughts, Mark?
I think we need to push it all the way and say, look, we are not going to stop in any way. We're going to help Israel finish this job. We need an unconditional surrender there. They need to dismantle, again, all of that nuclear stuff. It needs to be like literally gone through with a fine-tooth comb so that they cannot rebuild. We can't have this situation. And since World War II, America has never played to win. We always play these little games. It's too many lawyers involved in the decisions. When you go to war, when there's a bad guy, you got to finish the job. And so we need to finish the job. And not only that, this is really important, guys. Ezekiel 38 says that Israel's going to be in a state of peace with their neighbors before that war happens. And if Iran is there, and again, we play this like, oh, okay, we've hurt them enough, and you let them rebuild. The Houthis are going to be back. Hamas is going to be back. That can't be. We just know from the biblical reality is God's described them at peace. And so I would suggest to you what's going to happen, whether it's America, Israel, a combination of the two of us and others, this thing's going to be cleaned up. There's going to be a state there that's going to be peaceful with Israel for a period of time. And I would suggest, I don't know about you, Josh, I would suggest to you that Babylon's going to be rebuilt. Revelation talks about there in the last days, a mystery Babylon, the religious element, but also the city of Babylon and all the trade and so forth. Wouldn't it be interesting? And I take it literal. I know many people say Babylon's Rome and so forth, but how do you take that, Josh?
I would take it as a literal Babylon being rebuilt, and this paves the way for that rebuilding. It opens up the resources that the Middle East has to bring finances, more finances into the region, more trade into the region, more influence on the global scale. So it could really lead to this fulfillment of what we see ultimately destroyed in Revelation chapters 17, 18, and 19.
Yeah. And when you start to think about that, America has done what with its enemies? Like you look back to our wars historically, whether it was Japan has this massive economy that the U.S. built after, unconditional surrender. And then Germany the same way after World War I and after World War II. And I just think we're poised again for another situation where actually a really bad actor, Iran, is dealt with. And then there's going to be this rebuilding and Babylon and so forth.
So you mentioned Ezekiel 38, and we're watching social media, and many pastors, some that we're affiliated with, are saying we're seeing the setup for Ezekiel 38. And you just mentioned we're not there yet. What has to happen exactly before that scenario can even unfold?
Yeah, it's more than just the players. A lot of times people talk about the players and their alignment, but the conditions on the ground have to be different in Israel. So, for example, in 38:14, God says, my people, Israel, are living securely. They're living securely. It talks about them not having any bars.
Unwalled villages.
Unwalled villages. So they are going to be at a state of total peace. That can't happen with Iran and a bomb. So that's the reason I'm suggesting to you guys, if we are this close to this being fulfilled, this is going to be the end of Iran. This is going to be the rebuilding potentially of Babylon for later on fulfillment of Revelation. I think this is real setup. I think what has to happen is that America comes on the scene with Israel and says, listen, you got to have unconditional surrender. We're going to go through everything here. You institute what we did with Japan. You appoint a general like Douglas MacArthur, super high capacity guy. You put in a temporary government. You help them write a constitution. And then in 2 years, you let them have an election. But this is important. People today have reactionary sort of feelings and emotions and say things. You have to have an end game. And that's what we had in World War II. And that's what we need again in America. Not just reaction, but not just getting involved in things, but how do we end this? And what does it look like in the end game?
Yeah, and I think there's two questions that we have to deal with. Many people are at an absolute aversion to war because as Americans, we have seen these forever wars go on and on and on. So number one, us getting involved with Iran and Israel, will that turn into a forever war? And number two, with the rebuilding of the Iranian nation and people, what makes that different than anything else we've done? What about the Christians that are there in Iran? Guys, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, when I think about Afghanistan, for example, when we went there, there was no church there. If there were any Christians, they would have been in hiding and so forth. We've got somewhere between 300 and 500,000 Christians in Iran. And so again, whether it's the Israelis leading this or the Americans leading this, someone needs to say, look, we're not just dismantling Iran, but there's a future. And this is a step forward. So you take the lead and help them. And I would suggest if I had President Trump sitting here, I'd say, President Trump, take one of our best leaders, put him in charge, go to some of the Christian leaders there and so forth, and you say, we're going to appoint a temporary government, help them write a constitution, 2 years you have elections. You lay all of that out and let them go forward.
Ken, thoughts on forever wars?
Well, Yeah, Americans are tired of war. If you look on social media and what people are talking about, they're sick of it. We looked at what happened in Afghanistan, and we saw the tragic withdrawal that we did there. So people are tired of that. But getting back earlier to the point, not only making Iran secure, but look at what they're doing in Gaza. They have the chance to defeat Hamas and then redo that area too. So when you look at Ezekiel 38 being formed and Israel living in a secure area, eliminate Hamas, Hezbollah's out of the picture, and now Iran. Their immediate threats are gone because of the Abraham Accords. All the other Arab countries want to have peace.
Yeah, and President Trump's trip over there just recently, that's one of the things he kept saying. You got to have normality. You got to have a peace with Israel. And they're like, okay, but we got Iran over here. Now Iran's being dealt with. And this is creating a whole new stage like we've never experienced in my lifetime. My whole lifetime, Iran has been threatening America, has been threatening Israel. And whether they're sending proxies or whether they're sending terrorists or we're going to get the bomb and we're going to deliver that, praise God, it's being dismantled.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to me just to think through all of this. This has happened in less than a week. Israel's been planning for this for 15, 20, 25 years to deal with these things. They were extremely strategic in their attacks. They did not take out unnecessary things. They took out the generals. They took out the nuclear scientists. They took out the top brass. They took out the propaganda machine. And now everything else is falling into place. And if America joins with them and takes out the nuclear facilities, we, as we've been talking, have a very, very, very different Middle East. It's night and day different than what it was even 2 weeks, 2 months ago. And so things are changing at such a rapid pace that the scriptures are becoming clearer and clearer. It now makes sense to think, okay, there can be a time of peace before the Ezekiel 38 war. There can be a rebuilt Babylon in the book of Revelation. All these things are just proving that God is faithful and we can trust him and his words and his promises.
Yeah, that's why I really have an issue with conservatives and others that don't want to take care of this issue, because what we're seeing is violence and lawlessness on a scale never seen before. Iran is the largest state sponsor of terror. They are responsible for tens of thousands of deaths across the world, but especially Americans, thousands of deaths they've caused through their proxies. So if we don't combat this, if we don't go after them and eliminate this threat, it's just going to continue.
Now, I think we also have to make a distinction, and I think we've touched around it, but there is a difference between the Ayatollahs and the regime and the Iranian people, right?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not that all Iranians are bad people. It's not that all Iranians are buying into the terroristic tendencies of the regime. It's actually the regime that's, as the Ayatollah was put in place decades ago, that the oppression has come on. Before the Ayatollah ran and was in power, Iran was a free country, a free nation that was actually flourishing. And then the regime changed, and we have absolute chaos.
Yeah, and when we saw in 2009, when we had the chance to overthrow the Ayatollahs, President Obama, what did he do? He not only didn't support him, but he sent over a pallet full of gold and cash to the mullahs to keep them going. So we're responsible for some of that. We're responsible for some of what we're seeing right now. I think our prayer is that if these nuclear sites are eliminated and the Ayatollah is removed, that the people will rise up and form their own government like you were talking about.
Yeah, this is a unique opportunity in history in the Middle East. And I just think we're living in amazing times to watch it literally unfold right before our eyes. And I think Christians need to come back. Listen, God has told us Israel's going to be in peace. Yeah. That's a fact. The question is, how do you get there? And this seems to be the plan of how we get there.
All right. Well, we're going to transition here, Mark, and I want you to listen to a clip, and then I'll get your take on it.
Trump immigration authorities launched a series of targeted raids throughout the city of Los Angeles today. And tonight, a massive protest is taking place outside the LA headquarters of ICE.
We are having an administration that's targeting peaceful protests.
We haven't seen any violence happening here.
There's some yelling going on, but it doesn't seem as kinetic.
I haven't seen anyone pull out a weapon.
You have a number of, it appears, peaceful protesters. We didn't see any weapons or sticks or anything There wasn't anything like a riot happening.
True peaceful protesters who believe in a cause, who are doing this the right way.
These are peaceful people that want to get their message across.
Just a bunch of people having fun watching cars burn.
A message today in all 50 states, millions across the country from New York City to California, protesting what they see as an unconstitutional push by President Trump to expand the power of his office. They call the protest No Kings. More than 2,000 cities here in the U.S. and across the globe taking part in these protests today. It all comes after days of tense protest over immigration raids and President Trump's deployment of the military to Los Angeles.
The protests were mostly peaceful, but police say a pedestrian was hit by a car during the march. We also witnessed a brief scuffle between demonstrators and Trump supporters.
I'm getting called out on this because I called Donald Trump a wannabe dictator. It's because he is. The governor's being mean and the governor's speaking out on that. Well, maybe it's time for us to be a little meaner.
Welcome back to Understanding the Times. Our guest today is Pastor Mark Henry, Revived Church, Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. Mark, not only are we seeing violence and lawlessness all across the world, but we're seeing it right here in the States. And immigration is a hot topic right now. And we're seeing this administration and law enforcement, especially ICE and other agencies, trying to do something about it. Should we even try to remove some of these people out of here?
Absolutely. Think about what is the purpose of government? God created government to create order, not chaos, to remove chaos and to protect its citizens. That's why God created human government. And government carries a sword, according to Romans chapter 13, to deal with bad guys. That's their job. And so praise God, we have not, as President Trump has been called, a dictator. No, we actually have someone trying to support the law, enforce the law. That's not a dictator. That means you're submitting to the laws of the land. And that's exactly what needs to take place. And quite honestly, for Christians, you need to read through the Old Testament. When Israel had porous borders and people came in, they marauded the people, they looted the people. That's been true all through history. That's why you need governments, you need boundaries. These things are really important. Praise God, we've got people working on it.
Well, especially when we're seeing they're targeting the violent criminals first and foremost. Yeah. I mean, if we don't get them out of here, I don't know how anyone can be against that.
And it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable to attack federal agents, police officers, FBI. That is unacceptable. They need to be prosecuted to the highest level of the law.
And our elected leaders are involved in it. And we're seeing elected leaders creating some of this violence and lawlessness.
And that's treason, actually.
Exactly.
And if you look at state laws on treason and federal laws on treason, I think that the governor of California has stepped over the line. That's up for the legal teams, the federal legal teams to look at, but it is significant.
Our governor here in Minnesota.
Absolutely.
Well, Ken, you had a long career in law enforcement, and what would you do when there was an illegal alien in the country? Would you deport them? Would you arrest them? Would you deal with the problem?
They were arrested. ICE was called to the county jail, and they were picked up, processed, and if they were involved in crimes, they had a trial. They either went to jail or they were deported.
Okay, so what constitutes an illegal alien?
Someone that comes into the country that's not a citizen, that didn't go through the process of becoming a legal citizen. That's what you have to do to be a citizen in this country. And they did it for decades. My grandfather came over on the boat. He was at Ellis Island. He had to go through the process of becoming a citizen. But now we have the mindset that anyone can just come into the country at any time. They have all the same rights as an American citizen, and that is unconstitutional.
I've traveled all around the world. I go to another country. I assume I have no rights. Why? I'm not a citizen of that country.
Right, exactly.
And I've looked at moving to some other countries to do missionary work and advance the cause of the gospel. One country, Switzerland, in order to go there, you have to have $5 million in assets. You have to be a doctor or a lawyer. You have to bring something to that society. And no one's attacking them. No one's saying they're horrible, evil dictators. Or you go around the rest of Europe or South America. Every country has laws about how you come in, how you exit. And if you're going to move there with the kind of assets that you have to have as an individual, America has been very gracious. This is insane. It's absolutely lawlessness.
Exactly. We just got back from Australia and New Zealand. They knew exactly where we were, what we were doing, how long we were going to stay. And I talked to people over there that are citizens. Yeah, you want to become a citizen here? Just like you said, what are you going to bring to the table? You better have a business or something that you're going to bring to the table that's going to add to their society.
Or you're not welcome. You can't get in.
Exactly.
I looked at going to New Zealand.
Yeah, I'd love to go to Mexico and demand all my rights, free health care, free housing, all that. And that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
It's unheard of. I've never seen anything like
Now
that.
imagine going to Mexico, burning a Federale car, and standing on top of it holding an American flag. How do you think that would go in Mexico?
Right.
Or England, or you name the country.
Yeah. If you're not shot, you're deported immediately. There's going to be law and order that takes place there. Why can't we do that here? There needs to be law and order. We can't continue to make lawlessness the norm. We can't be importing people via airplane on the American taxpayers' dime and to integrate them into the nation to be citizens. That is illegal. That can't be taken out.
No, not only it cannot be, it should not be allowed. And quite honestly, America, you need to rise to the occasion, assume responsibility as citizens. And if you're a follower of Jesus, we are the best citizens there are, because the Bible commands us to honor those who are in authority, to lead by example, and not to allow evildoers to hurt other people. You know, one of the elements of the man code is real men protect others. And we've become so soft, so passive in this society. We don't even know who the bad guys are, who the good guys are, and all of the rhetoric. What I'm worried about, Josh, is all of the rhetoric, the younger generation with the dismantled families aren't able to see the dangers and the threats. America is in a very precarious situation, and Satan, who is the father of lies, is spreading lies and seducing our children.
Well, we all expected literal all hell to break loose and riots and chaos to happen this past weekend because of the No Kings protests. So let's listen to this clip and then discuss what happened.
They got their C's, chaos, confusion, corruption, and cronyism, and we got ours. The courts, the court of public opinion, the Congress, and the courage of this community. Because this community understands how to fight back. No one is going to save us but ourselves, but it takes courage. So my friends, rather than yield on bended knee, we stand up. We all care. We all act. We do it together in solidarity. So I want to end with a quote from the father of our last speakers, specifically Martin Luther King's final book. He wrote, "Where do we go from here? Chaos or community?" Well, Philly, you are the community to this president's chaos. And together, we build a future of opportunity and justice for all. Hope over fear, aspiration over anger, the promise of America for each and every American. That is what we are fighting for today. So, I say, the people united will never be divided.
Well, you're listening to Understanding the Times Radio. Pastor Josh here with Ken Michael and Pastor Mark Henry. Now, question is this, guys. Is Trump truly trying to be an authoritarian king?
Well, like he said, after that protest, it must have worked because he's not a king and he's still the president of the United States. So obviously it didn't. It paid off for what they did, or they think it did, but it was ridiculous. It was, what was the goal of this? To have a protest to say that we're under the authority of a king like we would have been in England or Europe? I mean, it didn't make any sense, but it was a nationwide protest, and we saw it happen all over the country.
Yeah, over 1,500 protests around the country. I've seen as high as 2,000. But, you know, we were anticipating what we saw in L.A. just a week earlier in the burning and looting and so forth. Praise God, that didn't happen, and people have the right to speak and to peacefully assemble and let their voice be heard. That's part of what the Constitution says. But when you listen to the rhetoric there of Randy, and she's going on and she quotes Martin Luther King, are we going community or chaos? I think if she actually read Martin Luther's book, he says we got to go community, we got to go love, we got to go peace, not chaos. And then she says, we are now the people of chaos, 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 chaos for Trump. That is demonic. Yeah. God is the author, not of confusion, not of chaos. That's Satan. God is the author of order. Order in the family, order in government, order in the church, order in the world, order in the universe. That is a demonic statement. And what concerns me is that I know Christians that showed up and were there, and right on their webpage, Josh, it said, this is, No Kings is a day of defiance. Yep. Satan is the defiant one. Yep. We are not a defiant people. We are a people, hupatasso, submit. That concept is everywhere in the scripture of the Christian life. We submit to God. We submit to the authorities that God brings over us, whether moms and dads, government officials, law officers. We submit to law officers in an organized, godly scenario that has been established for us. And defiance is not, you don't need to get thousands of people and say, we're going to be chaotic and we're going to defy. That is demonic.
Yeah. And I think we all just need a reminder from civics class as to what America truly is. We are not a democracy, and we are not a monarchy. We are a democratic republic, which means that there is democratic ways in which we vote. There are democratic means by which our elected officials come into office, but it is not a true ultimate democracy. And so it is not the rule of the people by the people. It is controlled and not chaotic. Mark, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, constitutional republic means that there are laws in place, and it's not just everyone coming together and automatically 51% get their ways. There's laws that are put in place. The president has to submit to them. That's why he has gone to court and has paid lots of money in lawyers' fees over his lifetime. Everybody is under the law. Law enforcement is under the law. So that's what a constitutional republic does. And then in our constitutional republic, there is an election process. So when they're talking about how we're going to be the people of chaos and confusion and we're for democracy, just remember, Randy, President Trump won the majority vote. That's the democratic process, and the electoral college vote, that's the democratic process within a constitutional republic. So when you say, for example, there was a protest right next to our house, and there was a gentleman holding a sign that said, Veterans for Democracy opposing President Trump. He's opposing exactly what took place through the democratic process within the constitutional republic. What does he want? Chaos and disorder.
Right.
Well, our guest today has been Pastor Mark Henry, Revive Church, Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. Mark, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can find us on, the best way is just do a search. Just search Mark Henry, and you'll see Revive Church, Mark Henry Ministries, 412 Church. It'll come up everywhere.
And look for us on our Thursday night events, too, on his website. Mark, I want to thank you for joining us. Thank you, and God bless you and your ministry.
Thanks.